the Mindset Athlete podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. I'm a two-time Paralympian and owner of James Robert Fitness, which is an online training, nutrition and mindset coaching business. First of all, I'd like to thank Lauren Williams for suggesting this quote to the show. An athlete is a mindset. It's how you prepare, think and execute. Not because of some elite status or physical stature. Anybody can be an athlete. By Chris Harth. And each week on the Mindset Athlete, we like to bring you inspirational athletes, a message, or experts talking about human optimization to teach you how to change your perception of your mindset and become 1% better. And on today's show, I've got Key Michaels. Key is a professional volleyball player having competed in the top leagues of Europe for 10 years, including Germany, Italy, Turkey, and France, with a Champions League silver medal to boot. She was part of the London 2012 Olympic team volleyball squad, as well as working on the media side for NBC at Rio 2016. Now she is combining a love for photography, broadcasting, and volleyball on a YouTube channel, as well as on the mic for the A Space podcast. So welcome onto the show, Key.
Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks for that grand introduction.
The pleasure is all mine. So beyond the initial introduction that I've given you there, and obviously we discussed at length off air of something I didn't even know before speaking to you, of what was the transition like from going from the University of Miami, where you played collegiate volleyball, to kind of not doing any volleyball at all, to then being thrust into being in the squad, the national team for GB in the preparation for London 2012?
Well, that transition was over several years, so it's hard to describe the ups and downs all in one word. But I played in university, and then I was kind of done with it. I thought that my volleyball career was going to end there. I was happy with it. Moved over to Australia, wanted some new things, a new life, as it were. And then, got the call, hey, GB's hosting the Olympics, and I reckon you might have a spot on the team if you give it a go. So I just went over, tried out, and then I went pro, and I've been going pro. I've been playing pro for the last 10 years. Crazy how one thing can just change the whole path of your life.
Do you think from that basis then, if you don't take that opening in that, with the door opening with London 2012 happening, do you think, and this is a what if, do you think your life goes down an entirely different direction?
Yeah, 100%. And we spoke about this a little bit off air. I think, I really enjoyed volleyball, and it was a part of my life, specifically going through university. But I had so many other things that I wanted to explore, and I definitely didn't want to be defined as an athlete my whole life, which now, having looked back on it, is probably exactly what I have done. But even now, I think, you know what, I have been an athlete, and I did do those things that you mentioned before, but I think all of us have a little bit more than just that to offer. So I think I'm really excited just sort of diving into other things, other avenues of human spirit and human being at the moment.
And do you think, having played in with the likes of in Germany, Italy, Turkey, if you had to pick one of them over how would I word this? If you had to pick one country over another that you've played in, and this is a difficult question, because some people probably won't be happy
Actually,
with your
answer.
answer.
Easy. If I know what you're going to ask, it's a pretty easy question.
Which one would you pick?
Italy.
And why?
Well, so for volleyball, which I don't know how many of your listeners are familiar with volleyball in the way that it works professionally, but it's pretty low key in most of the European countries, except Italy. And there's a handful of other exceptions, but I would say Italy is the one that has the best all around. It has awesome fans. It has a super high level. You get paid well. You live well. You eat well. I mean, there's the beautiful country itself, the people, the language. I mean, I'm fangirling a little bit over Italy, but I really, really enjoyed my time there. And I think if you speak to any volleyball players, you'll probably hear a pretty similar answer, that it's a really fantastic place to play.
So is it quite difficult from a contract perspective to keep your place in a league such as that then?
Good question. It depends on your club. It depends on your performance. It probably depends on a lot of things that I have no idea about, the uppers who are making the decisions. But it's one of those things that once you get your foot in the door, you really have to prove yourself, because they're not giving away spots for free. It's a very coveted country to live and to play in. And I was lucky to play there for 2 years and then go on to play in Turkey. So I'm glad I had the experience. But I think that's the awesome thing about playing sport in general, is traveling, experiencing different cultures, meeting different people, getting all of the different experiences that it has to offer. So I wouldn't have said, I wish I had played only in Italy for my whole career, because I'm so glad with the people I met and the places I went and the things I've done. And I think any young players who might be listening to this and thinking, maybe one day I'll go pro, that's what I would recommend. Try a little bit of everything. Don't ever get comfortable. Don't ever just say, no, this is good enough, because there's so many things to see and do.
So on that note then, Key, from a atmospherical point of view, and then the overall experience, which would be the pinnacle for you? Having the 4 years at the University of Miami, your Champions League silver medal, ultimately the final, or the experience of London 2012?
Ooh, do I have to pick one? I mean, I think each one has its own benefits and challenges. I mean, obviously 4 years compared to just one match, if you're talking about, or one tournament, if you're talking about the Olympics. I think that playing in university shaped me as a person more than just one volleyball match, for example, the Champions League final. I think that being a student athlete is something really unique to the States. And they have a program, as most people probably know, that sports is a business in universities in the US. And you grow up really fast. You're sort of spoon-fed in some instances, but also you have to juggle so many different things, from school to sport to social life and all the things that come in between. So I think over the span of 4 years, I think players really, you kind of find yourself. You find your strengths and weaknesses, and you grow up a lot. Yeah.
So the diplomatic answer there.
I didn't choose one, did I? I would say if I could only have chosen one of those three things. Oh gosh, I don't know, because I wouldn't give up the Olympics either. Oh, I know. I can't answer.
That's fair enough.
I've been lucky.
but beyond obviously the university experience, you've obviously gone to the University of Miami, which in itself is a brand. It's renowned for the symbol that's been created from it. So you're part of a community that has that privilege of being able to be the figureheads of the university, be the student athletes. So being that said, do you think from a judgment point of view, be that what we talked about off air, of you being thrust in the spotlight that social media that does, do you think those athletes are then put on another pedestal even more from a greater perspective because of the reputation that university has, because of a symbol, be it the U for the University of Miami, Texas with the lot. Do you think that brings, because it's synonymous with that university, it brings a level of, you need to bring a little bit more to the table, and you're going to be held to a higher standard than maybe and there's no disrespect to anybody else, any college that anybody's been to, but maybe a little bit more under the spotlight.
Interesting. Well, I think, for example, when I went to University of Miami, social media was not what it is today. I mean, Facebook was a baby. So I think it's really important for all athletes to consider that everything they do, they're representing their school or their club or their nation or whatever it is. I think you can't get away with any of the shenanigans. I mean, you can, but none of it can go online, let's say. I would say the University of Miami has always, I don't know about always, because it had a bit of a thug reputation for a while, and that it took a while for them to clean that up. But going forward, at least I can speak for myself and my teammates and the people that were at school when I was at school. We were absolutely, we're wanted to be upstanding citizens and show our best face and represent the university in everything that we were doing. So wearing that U on the chest, it makes you proud. And I think, I don't know if we were held to a higher standard, but I hope that we upheld a high standard, if that makes sense.
But do you think from that basis it helped you when you moved to, obviously the Olympics happening before your professional career? Do you think that helps you prepare for those kind of scrutinies that you were going to face on the Olympic stage and then obviously the professional stage, where people are looking for you to make any slip up and they will scrutinize you for that?
Were we prepared? I think yes, but I wouldn't say that people were looking for us to slip up and be scrutinized for it. In fact, almost the opposite, because as Team GB, we went in as the underdogs, we went as the host country. We were kind of, I feel like we weren't held to the same standard as the rest of the team. There was no expectation of us to win anything, to do anything at all, but just be there and smile and be happy that we were part of it. And obviously we worked hard and we put our best foot forward and we did everything we could to be as competitive as possible. But at the end of the day, the teams that we were up against had, century-long histories with volleyball in their countries. I mean, if you look at Brazil or if you look at Russia or any of those teams that have a lot of history and money behind their sport, we weren't on the same playing field really as them. So I didn't feel any pressure. I didn't feel any scrutiny. I was just really, really a little bit like wide-eyed to play against this caliber of players. And I wouldn't say I had imposter syndrome by any means, but I looked around and thought, whoa, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm one of the people that's lucky enough to be on this court at this time. And it definitely changed my trajectory in life.
Did you have to check yourself then on when you're having that kind of thinking of either imposter syndrome and I'm lucky to be here, to kind of, well, if I don't get myself in check and focus on the here and now, the game's going to be gone in a blink of an eye, and I'm not going to put words into your mouth, but regret not having taken every opportunity to get a one over somebody that I've idolized.
Well, I think it was to our advantage, if anything, because we did go in there with, this is amazing. We had this sort of childlike wonder about us. And, when a child goes headfirst into the unknown, they don't really know what the dangers are. They don't know what they don't know, I guess I could say. And so we sort of dove in headfirst into the deep end, and these other teams were a little bit on the back foot because they maybe weren't expecting us to get so many balls returned or to have such an impact on the court. And we did put some pressure on a lot of teams that maybe weren't expecting it. Maybe we caught them off guard. But I would say that I've always tried to play with an optimism, with an enthusiasm, because that's when you enjoy the sport that you're doing, that's when you get the most out of yourself, I think, as a player, or that's what I found with myself anyway.
Do you think on that basis then, Key, that do you think you had more pressure on your shoulders than at the University of Miami then, because of it being more of a sport that is obviously played more, than it is in the United Kingdom? Do you think because there's more athletes being churned out for, be it the club scene, and it's not the AAU, but the equivalent of what the AAU is for basketball, but the volleyball scene, that there's so many athletes that are going to go to the collegiate level, so that the level of player is a little bit more rounded versus maybe because you've got no pressure whatsoever at the Olympics, you can kind of let loose. Do you think there was a little bit more pressure on yourself, or you put more pressure on yourself at the collegiate level because of biases that you might have versus this is where female sports people, they're more tempted to be looking at their contemporaries as well. They're doing this, they're doing that. Why am I not able to do that? Do you think, be it because you were in that position in the US, there was more pressure vis-a-vis when you're at the Olympics with Team GB, that you are the underdog? So whatever we do, people are going to commend you for overachieving. Obviously, you're going to hold yourself to a higher standard, but do you think there was more pressure in the US?
Well, I don't know if I'm an anomaly, but I don't really feel pressure. Like, I'll feel nervous and I'll feel sometimes out of my depth, but I don't necessarily feel pressure. And maybe that's because I've never been the big point scoring, I'm a middle blocker. So of course there's expectations, but you're not on the court to be the big point scoring machine. So I don't know that I've really ever felt huge pressure in university, in pro, in Olympics, in any of these scenarios. And maybe that's because I'm a little bit oblivious. Maybe I'm a bit naive, but I kind of, I don't know. As I said, I show up with the mentality of I want to get better and I want to be the best teammate that I can be, but I don't feel pressure from coaches. Maybe I've made good decisions in choosing which coaches to play for, or maybe they just realize what they can do to get the best out of me, and putting pressure on me is not, maybe they just realize that that's not the way they're going to get the best out of me. So to answer your question, I don't remember what the question was. But
do you think there was more do you think there's more pressure in the collegiate level than the Olympics, based on the scenarios and the circumstances?
No. As I said, I see what I see and I feel what I feel, and I didn't feel pressure in either of those situations. Just pumped to play.
Well, that's a good place to be at, isn't it? In terms of, and I'll put it like context for people, obviously within your entourage. I've only felt like that probably twice in my entire sporting career, which is
that you've always felt pressured instead.
No pressure whatsoever.
You never feel pressure, yeah.
And I think mine was the 2008 Paralympic final, which that is still, to this day, that's probably the pinnacle for any Olympic or Paralympic athlete, to make a final. You should be a little bit nervous or apprehensive. I wasn't. I'm thinking there's something wrong with me, but based on what you said, I'm not alone in that way of thinking. But I think it does put you in a good position, because it's like, well, what have I got to lose?
Yeah, I think that's more the attitude. It's not that I don't put any value on the match, or that I don't realize that things are at stake, or it's just more of you go into it knowing that it's not pressure from the outside. It's something maybe from the inside, that you want to do your best and you want to win and you want all of these things that you've worked towards, but it doesn't feel like pressure. Maybe pressure is just the wrong word. Maybe there's something else, self-imposed expectations, but not pressure.
Well, I think probably not, pressure is probably not the right word, like you say. I think it's probably judgment, and I mean internal judgment, as you do have. Well, athletes don't normally talk in this way, but obviously you'll hear it in general in the general populace of saying, "Well, I'm not good enough," or "I don't look good enough." Well, who's telling you that? Obviously, an athlete will be very opinionated. Well, I don't care what you think. It's like,
well, see, maybe that's it though. I've definitely been in that situation where I felt that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't deserve to be there. And maybe that's why I didn't feel pressure, because I always had this sort of underdog mentality, that I was just lucky to be there and I just made the team, even if that might not be the case. Maybe I was selected first and foremost, but I didn't see that in myself, which in itself is probably a mental hurdle that I've had to overcome through the years.
Do you think playing the position that you do helps? Because ultimately you downplayed that in terms of I'm only middle block I didn't have to play that position, thankfully, because I'm quite small. But it's a work for people that don't know volleyball. It's probably the workhorse of the team. You can't guess because ultimately, put some perspective. Because I did play libero a little bit occasionally. And
I'd be horrible.
I would probably be the first person to shout it if you guessed.
Yeah.
Obviously, not being the same gender, but you get the drift where I'm coming from. I would be very annoyed with you if you kind of happen to eyeball the setter and you go a different direction.
Which happens often, by the way. Sometimes you have to give it up. You have to just say, look, I've scouted you, and in 99% of the time, if she does this, she's going to set the ball behind, so I'm going to take one little step that way, and she could totally burn you and send the ball out to the pin, but you got to take those risks sometimes.
Do you think you're damned if you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't?
Yeah, a little bit involved. Well, as a middle blocker, you are almost expected to be everywhere at all times. If there's a hole in the block, it's your fault. If the ball went around the block, it's your fault. You kind of get used to that, but I don't know. I enjoy it.
So from that perspective then, and this is a hard question to ask you, Key, who gets the rough of the, I can't think of the word, the rough deal then on that basis, the middle blocker or the libero then? Who would get the hardest deal for not doing their job properly?
Well, I've never been a libero, so I can't speak for them. I think that would be a really difficult position, but you got to, everyone who's libero just loves volleyball, just loves throwing themselves around and running after crazy shanked balls. So there's a little bit of that, but also maybe you have to be a bit crazy to be middle as well, because we're literally like chickens with our heads cut off. We got to block here and then jump there and then run back there and transition. But we might be getting a bit technical. I don't know if all your listeners are volleyball players. I think that volleyball is a cool sport that everyone plays a role, and you can't have any stars on the team really, because there are 3 contacts on the ball every time, and you can't do them all yourself. So there have to be workhorses, and there have to be sacrifices, and there have to be, point scorers. But that's the beauty of sport, isn't it?
I think where you say that even if you get into the technical nuances of the sport, everybody's played some level of volleyball, be it at school.
Not in England, surely.
Not necessarily here, but be it if we say that the mainstays of countries you've played at, be it like picnic, beach,
true.
just for the recreational sense of there is no quote unquote rules. Somebody would have touched a volleyball at some point. Even in this country, I worked in education for a little bit because of my background with the Paralympic team. They wanted me to teach it. So thinking, okay, technically that's going to be very. I was quite surprised. I hadn't touched a ball in, like we said off air, 7 years. I still had some of the dexterity. It was probably not up to my standards, but people were presently, well, you do it. You do things very proficiently. I won't say very well, but I'll be a little bit harsh on myself. But that's a skill. That's a skill that you've probably done longer than I have. I did it for 4 years, and I did it day in, day out. They're going to do it for a little microcosm of that for a couple of weeks, and it's not a skill that's going to happen overnight. To be able to do that, and the balls that they use were probably lower standard. That the grip's a little bit harder to control, right. So you can't ping somebody for what you talk about, like technicality, like a double touch or something, because it's that more difficult to control,
right? From
that basis. So, but I think people will do, and that might be a sport that might come to the fore. Obviously, like we discussed about. To do with COVID, it's going to be difficult because of the cross-contamination with the ball. And it's the same probably with every team sport. They're going to be the last things. And I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but this is probably just common sense speaking. The last things to go back because they're inside, and it's having to have multiple people to be able to make it work.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of the girls that I know that have signed contracts for next season, you know, they're already starting to plan their trips back. And I think one of the national team, I think it was, Vakif Bank, one of the teams in Turkey, I was doing a podcast with one of the girls there. She said they're starting up training in July. Supposedly they're going to start training in July. I don't know how. But yeah, it's going to be a totally different world when we go back to it.
Well, you could do it individually. I saw he was the Brazilian sitting volleyball captain. He's became their libero, and he's very not synonymous, but he's very active on social media. And the early days of lockdown, he was training in his back garden with a wall.
Yeah.
So
Alone,
it is
you can train
it is a sport that you can even when I was at university and I wasn't with the rest of the guys, and this was in the early days, I used the wall to try and get better. And obviously I progressed a lot since the early days of playing sport, to where I obviously had the opportunity, like yourself, to make a team.
Sorry, there's a dog barking out there. He always comes on every time I want to do a podcast.
It's all right, but I think from that basis, it's just adapting to that situation, and I think women's volleyball is very synonymous with that. It's not. No, there's not one style of play. That every country has their own unique way of playing. If you haven't seen it, the difference between the women's game and the men's. Obviously, the men's is very much about power. Maybe the Russian women is very similar, and the Americans to probably a certain extent as well. Whereas other countries, they use what they're good at. So be the Asians, I won't say height deficient, but they're a little bit smaller than maybe some of the other countries. So they use speed. And would you say GB probably look to use bits and bobs and kind of like a hybrid version of kind of being the best of both worlds?
With GB?
Yeah,
definitely. Our coach Audrey, she was a big believer that the first touch should be really high, give lots of time to the setter, and then the setter would introduce the speed. So whereas I think Asian countries try and, they'll get the ball in fast to the setter give the ball fast to the wings, and the whole game is kind of overwhelmingly fast. So we tried to incorporate that a little bit because we didn't have the biggest hitters. We didn't have the most power or the most experience or the best ball handling skills. So we had to have a bit of a hybrid of what would work. And we tried to find areas of the net that weren't necessarily commonplace for lots of attacks. And we would try to do like pop-up attacks. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but where you'd kind of have the middle blocker and then the pipe would come in just right behind. So as the middle was jumping with our middle, the pipe would just sort of come up right behind and try and score that way. And we tried to be a little bit sneaky and find some non-traditional methods of scoring.
I think something that we did as well with the Paralympic team, we looked to utilize what we had at our disposal from player perspective, take bits and pieces from other teams that we played against over the obviously it was a credit to us. Once we got knocked out, a lot of teams were replicating what we'd done. So it's like, okay, we've invented now a new style of play that other countries are adopting. So that's probably a legacy from London 2012 that was probably left in the Paralympic version itself, that we've implemented this style of play. And countries haven't thought about it. So also be it even, what was it? One of the countries ended up finishing silver medalists using plays that we ran. So thinking, well, that's kudos to obviously the coaches and the players actually going about and executing that, to kind of saying, well, a medalist team probably taking it up a level and utilizing it because, we've never thought about running it that way, to be able to, what's the word I want to use? Take advantage of a limitation in the opposition, whatever defense, or because it's not the original way of doing it.
Yeah, you have to be a bit creative and exactly sort of look at what your strengths are and play to your own strengths and try and find the weaknesses in what appears to be an otherwise impenetrable team. And yeah, just get creative.
Well, it is down to belief, isn't it? Because ultimately the court dimension is the same for both teams. You can't necessarily take up every space at the net. You can't keep everything off the floor because people make mistakes. People obviously there's deflections and all sorts. You can't take away every free space on the court, irrespective of how good you are or how good the team is.
Yeah, and that's a bit what I was talking about earlier, is that you have to, in volleyball, you sort of give up some bits. Like you'll scout a team and you'll say, right, they hit 80% of the balls to this corner, so we're gonna leave that other area of the other side, just leave it undefended. And if they hit there, bravo, good for them. Next point. You kind of have to take that approach.
So do you say that's analysis or guesswork?
Analysis.
So you give license to, and this is probably, and I might share this with the person because he used to get a rough deal of it because he's one of the younger ones, because he'd guess, and you're thinking, well, you've guessed.
But how do you know he's guessing on it?
Because he would hold his hand up and say it and be brutally honest and say that's what I've done. It's like, whereas maybe somebody older, I was 3 years old, I wouldn't have said that. I would have said no. That's generally what he does. Case in point, what you've said. That's why I did it. No, I haven't guessed, but that's probably that's youthful exuberance and naivety. It's like, no, I'm not going to give you the answer that you want to justify the means. I'm going to give you, this is why I chose to do this type of action based on the homework that I've done.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's a split-second decision, especially in blocking. And if you've watched enough video and you've done enough analysis, and you see what's happening in front of you and you make a decision based on all of that experience and what you see, in his mind, it might have been a guess, but actually an educated guess, which is not.
Oh no, I won't give him that license. But that's probably being harsh to him.
Yeah, but that's kind of what you have to do as a middle. You kind of get, otherwise if you're too hard on yourself, it's impossible. You've got to give yourself a little leeway.
But do you think it's even harder because it's like a cryptic sport? In terms of what I mean by that is they are so good at their craft, the setter, that they can do the best ones, obviously, whatever they want with the ball. It could go forward, back, sideways, and you've got to obviously make one decision in the split second of an eye. And you'll just, for example, be it just using 3, there's more, but you obviously, like I said earlier, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Most of that from a percentage wise was that you got a 40% chance of being right on average.
I don't know what the numbers would be, but I don't know.
Well, it's probably enormous amount because you've got probably infinite combinations. So it probably it's probably even the number is probably even lower than that. But in terms of making the right decision, it is quite difficult because ultimately they're looking at you as well.
Yeah, and their goal is to trick you. So if they do, they've done their job. And if they don't, you've done your job. So somebody has to lose, right, in that situation. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's where experience comes in, and maybe just when you see as much volleyball, if you watch as much volleyball as possible, scouting and just years of experience, you maybe can get a little bit of an edge over the setter in that way. But then again, maybe not, because she can really disguise where she's going with the ball. It's difficult.
Do you think you've got better at your craft then, from a statistical analysis?
It's hard to say
viewpoint?
because I'm sort of on the verge of retirement at the moment. So I think you get to a certain point where you can trust your instincts, but then you get to another point where you can't trust your body. So maybe your instincts are correct, but your body's letting you down because you're a little bit slower, you're jumping a little bit lower than you used to, not as powerful, not as strong. But so there's kind of like a balancing point where one starts to increase and the other one starts to decrease.
Do you think you had a tendency to start to cheat then a little bit more then to make up for that limitation?
I don't know about cheat. Like I feel like taking one step in one direction, is that what you mean by cheating?
That's what I mean, because obviously you get the context. I don't mean literally. For everybody else, I don't mean literally trying to
not
cheat
cheating.
the game or cheat the system. I mean as in taking a step in one direction or the other,
right,
to gain the advantage that you put yourself in a better position.
I'd say when you're as a younger player, you'd maybe wait too long and you'd cheat at the last minute, and then you'd be off balance and you wouldn't have your momentum would be going the wrong way if she then did send the ball out to the pin. So then you'd be late to the block. Whereas as I got older, I realized, okay, if I take a cheat step a little bit earlier and then I'm still rebalanced, I've gained that little bit of step for the one side that I think she's going to go. But if she goes the other way, I'm still imbalanced to make a complete block step and close the block to the outside. Theoretically, in reality, if it actually always panned out that way is a different story. But you sort of get smarter in your cheating as you get older.
But do you think that do you say on that note then you've lost a step, so you need to a little bit have a combination of the two then now at the latter end of your career?
Well, in that scenario, I'm just assuming that maybe 80% of the balls are going in the direction I think. So it's only a 20% chance that the ball is going to go in the other direction. And I've given that away as saying, like, I might be late to the outside, but I definitely won't be late to close the block where she sends the ball 80% of the time. You know what I mean? There's sort of a give and take in the reading of the game and the analysis that you've done beforehand, that you just accept that this is where you cannot be late. This is where you cannot give up. But in those 20%, okay. That sort of thing.
No, well, that's a fair perspective of giving people. Well, it gives probably the younger up and coming volleyball players
all you volleyballers out there
to aspire to be. Obviously, the coach isn't going to be happy that in either sense, but I think as athletes, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't anyway. So,
it just comes back to if you've done the homework beforehand, and it's not a guess, it's an educated guess, because you have to, because you're giving yourself, for the 80% chance you've gone the right way, you've given yourself a leg up. So I think it's a game of numbers, and I don't think coaches could be upset with that. But that's the thing, you learn as you go, and the more experience you get, the more you're able to make these decisions, and coaches will trust you to have made the correct decision, even if the ball goes in the other direction.
No, I think that's a fair estimation. It gives people some context. But on that one, and moving swiftly on, do you not
want to talk about middle blocking all day long? Because I got more. I'm just kidding. Keep going.
Well, I only did it in practice or training.
I'm just nervous that you have like a broad audience, and some people will be like, "What is she talking about? Step in direction? What cheating? What?"
Yeah, but it gives somebody, well, if they don't know, it's an opportunity to learn something new.
There we go. Exactly.
This is time enough. Bit bored. learn about a new sport, and some may have done it at high school or junior high and haven't touched the ball since. They might want to be reacquainted to it. You never know who it'll have an impact on. So I think from
Anyone
that,
who's listening to this, make sure you send one of us a message and let us know that we've really brightened your day with all our volleyball chat.
well, it's laughing and joking, so it should bring a smile to people's day. It should be uplifting.
Yeah.
But do you think from a volleyball perspective now, as a whole, and obviously this is your opinion, do you think it is more sportsmanlike or gamesmanlike than other sports?
Ooh. Well, I don't really have experience in other sports. I played basketball a little bit when I was younger, but I mean, it varies from player to player. In general, I would say it's quite a respectful sport. I would say that people are switching up teams so often that you can't really afford to be that, that brazen towards your opponent, because the very next year you might be teammates. So there's quite a level of respect from player to player and team to team. So yeah, I think it's quite a sportsmanly game.
Do you think because of, I think the rules changed after I left a little bit as well, and from like the yellow cards and red card perspective, because that is in place, that you as a player won't step out of line, be it like a basketball player. I'll use Allen Iverson is the easiest one to use. Like, he stepped over a player after he scored on that opponent. You're not allowed to taunt after, be it a big block or like over celebrate beyond it, because of the what could happen.
Well, naturally, there's a barrier, right, between your team and your opponent. So there's no physical contact. There's no opportunity to make a display of dominance over your opponent other than just volleyball wise.
Yeah, well, the net's not that thick, though, in fairness.
Well, but you're not really coming into contact with each other. You can see each other. You can say a little something if you feel like it. But then the other thing is, as soon as you score the point, the tendency is for everyone to turn around and celebrate within their team. You don't have to scream across the court. You don't have to, it's not some big field where everyone's mixed up. It's really the point scored and then everyone comes together and this is the team celebration. So there's not really that much space for taunting or for being aggressive, like, physically against your opponents.
Yeah, I think you do.
Or
I think
do you disagree? Do you have?
I think I disagree. I think I disagree, but then I didn't play in that.
All right,
role.
story time. Go on then.
It's my perception of whatever blocker of there is, that you do kind of make a subtle gesture, be like you said, a passing comment to the opponent. Obviously, the noise of I blocked you, and then it's obviously it's the ego that takes over either side for that momentary animal probably instinct of, well, I've bested you for that point, and I'm gonna show. Maybe it happens more in the male side of the game where it's like where I've got to puff my chest out.
I don't know. I mean, it's natural as a competitor to sort of, as you say, puff your chest out and show them who's boss. But I think it's in my experience, it's always been done in a respectful way. And every once in a while, I mean, there'll be a couple of words here and there, but it's not the same as, I mean, basketball, the very next point, someone gets elbowed in the face and it's like, oh, okay, he's angry. He's angry about something, but there's no chance to do that in volleyball.
Well, it's a bit. Yeah. What about hitting one of the defenders in the face? That would be probably your only.
Yeah, but you can't do that on purpose. I mean, you could try, but that's
it's very difficult to. It's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
I think a few people have done it to me in the time, but obviously the ball's gone back. It's gone back. I don't know. I think I've been training. I got hit in the face, but that's because I was a bit late. But I think we ended up winning the point. And I don't know how. I must hit me in the square in the nose and managed to go in the air up to the right place. But I've seen
it before where someone will attack and the block will send the ball back and it'll hit her on the face and go back over the net. and land on the other court. That would be a bad one.
But it's frustrating probably as a hitter if that happens, because it's like, well, I've done everything I did. And
oh, but the hitter gets the point in the end. She hits, she gets blocked, the block hits her in the face and goes back
okay,
over
like
there.
that.
So she does score.
Well, you can't defend that.
So the blocker does their job, but because her head gets in the way,
you don't expect that to happen. So that's a kind of a mystery one. It's like, well,
yeah, I wouldn't want.
Don't know what you want me to do, coach. That's not going to happen 99% of the time.
Yeah.
So I think from that basis, yes, you got to be reactive and proactive to things. But do you think that's ever going to happen? No. So I think it's you can't even prepare for that eventuality. Maybe there on after you could probably replicate it, but is that likely to happen again? Very slim.
I hope not. Kind of embarrassing for everyone involved.
Well, the hitter doesn't care.
Yeah, if you got hit and then you got blocked directly into your face, you wouldn't care.
Yeah, but you still get it on the stat sheet, though.
You still get the points, but you got blocked into the frontal lobe.
Yeah, but you got to get off the high horse with that one. It's like, yeah, the ego would take a bit of a crash. Like that can take a back seat. We won the point. Get over it. Get over yourself. Obviously, if that was me, I wouldn't be very happy. But that's
exactly.
a different story.
I was going to say, I don't know. Oh, okay.
No, it has. I think it has. It happened in other sports where the referee pulled me up. Do you? And this is when I was playing rugby league later on, and said, "Oh, do you want to try or do you want a penalty?" Oh, he scored, and obviously I worried about myself because I got horse collared. So that's all I cared about. It's like, well, I've had somebody, quote unquote, really cheat because it's not allowed to do things like that in any sport, and I'd completely forgot about the pass that I've given. So when he says, "Oh, no, I'll take the decision that you've given," and that didn't happen, but it does. It is that animal instinct that I talked about earlier. You do forget about what's happened there on after, be it the person got hit in the face and the team got the point, but you will keep fixating on, well, the judgment factor of the implications of what's just transpired with me, and everything else there on after is like on autopilot. Well, did that actually happen? And you forget.
Yeah, we're all a bit self-consumed in general.
But do you think from that perspective, though, Key, that I think a sport giving you a different perspective, and I'm coming from a different direction now with this, but on the same topic, that you're able to compartmentalize?
Between sport and non-sport? Or life and volleyball?
Between life and sport, life, different factions of life being... Obviously, people will exacerbate and blow things out of proportion from time to time in life. Do you think using sport as a vehicle enables you to be better at that, to kind of analyze things, to kind of, well, that's not really a big deal?
Yeah. Well, I think sport in general is really good for sort of putting things in perspective, just in a grander sense, because as soon as you get out there and you have these experiences with your teammates and you're bonding and you have, adrenaline running, and there's all these emotional experiences that then when you come back to real life, let's say, for me at least, things sort of seem downplayed. Maybe I feel this specifically if I'm, during the day, if I'm leading up to training, maybe something will bother me or be upset about. And as soon as you get into training, all of that kind of disappears. And I think sport's really good at just switching your brain off from problems in life and letting you sort of get your energy going in the right direction, and then everything. I always feel better after training, even if it wasn't a great training, even if I didn't feel like I had ticked all the boxes and played my best volleyball ever. I always feel reinvigorated afterwards.
So people will be interested, and this has been my penultimate question to you then. What are you doing now then to be able to facilitate that? Because obviously sports are starting to try and gain some normality. I think horse racing's gone back. Football's Germany's gone back. It's not long off. I think it's next week here in the UK. But for obviously your sport to be more specific, what are you using now to kind of keep you grounded to what you talked about during the lockdown?
Well, good question. So I obviously haven't been playing volleyball, but I've been trying to stay in shape on my own schedule. I'm not at 100%, but I'm definitely, running and doing a little bit of working out. But I feel like it's a really good time for creativity more than the sporting side of it. I've been really enjoying this extra free time to sort of dive into the things that we talked about just in the beginning, YouTube, podcasting, making videos, using this creative outlet that once was maybe a sporting outlet, and now trying to turn that into a creative outlet. And it's so strange to talk about life after volleyball because it's coming up quick. But yeah, I'm just sort of trying to combine all of this knowledge that I have of volleyball and of experience as an athlete, and trying to put it into digestible information on the internet for maybe the next generation coming through that's saying, how can I get to that level? How can I have that kind of experience? What do I need to do? And there's obviously there's no one magic formula. There's no one word to say, or just hard work, because that's kind of a bit cliche. But yeah, I've been having fun sort of dabbling in different outlets as a sports person, but not on the court, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And I know I said that was a penultimate question, but I will do this is the penultimate question now, and I haven't done this for a few episodes, but I'll bring it back in. If you had to sit down with any athlete, dead or alive, who would you like to sit down and why?
Any athlete, dead or alive? Mm-hmm. Such a good question. I don't know. You put me on the spot. I don't want to say the typical, I guess the first that comes to mind would be someone like Michael Jordan, but I think that's because I was a big fan of Space Jam growing up. And not necessarily to do with the basketball, but the fact that I really loved the Looney Tunes, and he was, he was a celebrity to me, not because of his basketball, but because he was in a movie with Bugs Bunny. Like, that's really sad to say, but that's probably who I'd choose.
Well, that's fair enough. It's probably showing your age a bit as well, and I'm probably that era as well. But
did you know if you go onto the Space Jam website, it's literally just a portal into time? They haven't updated it since the movie came out, and that was what, like 92 or something, like early 90s.
I don't think it's probably mid 90s. So
Something like that. But if you go on, it's just everything's real pixelated, and there's sort of like.
Yeah, but that's what stuff was like.
Yeah, exactly.
25 years ago. Well, they keep talking about making a remake, a second one. And
yeah, they will.
They need to do it soon because LeBron James is almost retired. But
is he?
They do make. Well, he does. He's 30, early 30s, but obviously,
I think he's like
playing since he was 18 is going to take his toll at that level.
Yeah.
Playing as long, but it's got to probably things. The stars have got to align. What is it? Is the sequel as good as the original? That's obviously a topic for another day. With that one, But obviously, I like to end the episode with this question to all my guests. Okay, so if you had to summarize what we've been speaking about into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
That's so hard. All right. Can I make it a paragraph instead of just a sentence?
Yeah, absolutely. You've
I
asked the
would
question,
say,
so I'll give you the floor.
I would say that, sports is, whether it be volleyball or whatever sport that you choose, I think it's a really awesome outlet for not only physically, but learning so many things about yourself and becoming a more well-rounded person. I think I gravitate towards other athletes because I know that we have a shared experience of life and probably a similar outlook on life. And I think all kids should get into it at an early age, and you can learn a lot from a life as an athlete.
So once again,
I don't know if that sums it up or if that was something completely totally off topic that we hadn't even touched on, but that's it.
Well, that's your summary. It's
summary
that's
of
what you
life.
that's what you think it was. That's fine. I'm not going to.
Mostly, we just talked about cheating in the block.
Well, that's why I had to kind of contextualize it, because a lot of people might think of cheating.
Yeah.
So on that note, thanks again, Key, for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
Thank you. And I hope anyone listening, if they want to reach out, honestly, like, I'm really always open to chat to people about volleyball or just about sports in general, and they can check out my YouTube channel, which is kind of embarrassing, but also kind of fun. I love meeting new people, new athletes. And thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Oh, it was my pleasure. If you like this episode, please do share it with your friends, and do let Kai and I know what you thought of the episode by tagging us over on Instagram at VB_Kai. So that's VB_CI and at James O. Roberts 11. And again, you can do the same on Twitter and Facebook. And like we said in the episode, we'd love to hear from you. So if you had any additional questions, don't hesitate to shoot them over as well. And finally, don't forget to check out her YouTube channel, Kai Michael. So that's CIMICHAEL. Also, as usual, don't forget to check out my free content at fitamputee.co.uk and click on the tab Resources. But not forgetting, I've also started a new Facebook group, especially for the podcast, which you can find over on Facebook by typing in The Mindset Athlete. And last but not least, and not forgetting, I've also rebranded my other Facebook group to Adapt, Master and Improve Your Exercise and Diet to help you lose 10 plus pounds. So make sure to check out those links. They will be in the description. You can find all the show notes at mindsetgame.libsyn.com under the category General. So once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Mindset Athlete podcast.